All right, Abigail, let's go over this last essay question about World War II and post-World War II, because things do change compared to World War I. At the end of World War I, there is a Treaty of Versailles, and basically the loser of the war, mainly Germany, is meant to pay for the war. And it has a devastating effect on their economy, and it does lead to the rise of Hitler and World War II. Again, the German economy suffers terribly after World War I. And of course, when things go very badly, people reach out for a populist, a quick, easy answer for distress situations. So again, this directly leads to the rise of Hitler. So it'll be different after World War II. So again, yeah, I don't want to get too much into World War II itself, but we have our fascists on the loose. We have communists on the world. In the beginning of the war, they are actually allies, Russia and Germany. But I don't want to get too much into the war itself. It can go on and on. One thing I want to talk about the war is that we are basically isolationist after World War I. Again, most of the rest of the world joins the League of Nations at the end of World War I. We do not. We want to basically don't get involved with European wars ever again. So this will be a multiple choice question here, right? 1937, the war breaks out in 1939 in Europe. 70% of Americans, thought World War I was a mistake, that we shouldn't get involved. We were isolationists at this time. We have the Neutrality Act, no loans to either of the combatants in the war, which everyone in a sense knows is coming. I don't want to get too much into the war, but basically Germany does start it. Again, FDR, in a sense, understands that war is coming, and I think he understands that we will eventually get involved in the war, though that is up for debate. Here is one of the things that does happen. Again, the war starts in 1939 in Europe. We don't get involved, of course, until 1941, the end of 1941. But one thing we do is we, again, just like in World War I, we we sell stuff to England and the Allies. So we have this Lend-Lease program here. This is an important one, where basically England and the Allies borrow military equipment, but again, they eventually never really pay it back. But we are involved with England even before we get into the war. We are helping them. We are not helping Germany. Again, there will be a war with Japan. Of course, this is how World War II starts for the United States, right? Japan bombs Pearl Harbor in December of 1941. Of course, why did they bomb Pearl Harbor? One of the reasons is, and again, this will be a multiple choice question on the test, we have an embargo on the Japanese. Again, Japan has invaded China at this time, invaded Korea very brutally, so we have this, it seems to make sense, an embargo on giving them equipment that will help their war machine. So steel and aluminum and oil is embargoed against Japan. So we're lining up against Japan, and Japan looks to take us out of the war, take us out of basically the world structure by bombing Pearl Harbor. They're hoping that the United States will basically just sue for peace after our Navy is destroyed in Pearl Harbor, but of course that is not the case. So yeah, World War I goes on and on, World War II. I'm going to talk about these economists later, actually. So one of the big things with the war, women, again, come into the workforce, replacing men that go overseas. But here's where, the war for an economist becomes interesting, is after the war. And this is the question that's going to be on the test. And again, it's not like the end of World War I. And again, this should be mentioned in the essay, right? In the end of World War I, there was a Treaty of Versailles, where Germany is basically punished. Land is taken away from Germany. Germany has to pay reparations because they were the ones that have to declare they started the war. Again, we don't join the League of Nations. We become more isolationist after World War I. This will not happen after World War II. We are very much involved in the world today because of, again, the effects of World War I. We all know if you go to war with somebody nowadays, you basically have to rebuild that country. Except Mr. Trump, of course, says we should have kept oil in Iraq, but I think most people say that would be not the most practical or wisest decision to do. But at the end of World War II, we try to help the German and Japanese economies. We have the Marshall Plan is called in Europe. And this will be on the test too. The Marshall Plan is where we basically give cash stipends to countries to help them rebuild after the war. And again, one of the reasons is we don't want the communist Russia having too much influence in Europe, so we want to get those economies back up and running. So a lot of European countries take advantage of U.S. loans through the Marshall Plan. We also help start these international organizations that will encourage world trade and will help the world's economies. Because it's the lesson of World War I that if you let economies suffer, people a lot of times will reach out for that populist quick answer to fix their problems, which would be communism, fascism in the 20th century. So how does this take an effect? What are the organizations that are created? This is what should be on your essay. Because during World War II, right at the end, there is this conference in Bretton Woods. There's a link here if you look in the PowerPoint slides in Blackboard. Bretton Woods is a hotel in New Hampshire, and basically the the allies of World War II get together before the war ends and decides how to rebuild basically the world and world trade after the war. And one thing they come up with is the International Monetary Fund, right? And the World Bank. The IMF, or the International Monetary Fund, basically what they try to do is they try to promote world trade by giving countries short-term loans if they're short on cash, right? If Brazil doesn't have enough dollars to buy U.S. cars, so Brazil will have money maybe in a few months once the sugar crop comes in. So the IMF basically will loan Brazil some U.S. dollars. They can buy the cars, and then in a few months they can pay back the IMF. So it's an international organization that hopefully promotes world trade, because the U.S. buys a lot of sugar. Well, that's not really true, but they could buy a lot of sugar from Brazil. But that's a whole other story. Let's not worry about the Yalta and Potsdam conference, but again, it's all about this communism. There'll be a question on the final, but again, here's again the IMF. They help regulate these currencies, stabilize currencies. Again, they'll give temporary loans to countries to help them buy things and help them to keep their currencies at a certain level. So this facilitates trade, these temporary loans. Yeah, it's called the special drawing rights. When you get a loan from the IMF, you get these special drawing rights, and then you can turn them into cash. There's, I believe right now, 6 different world's money that you can get from special drawing rights, like the British pound, the euro, the Chinese renminbi. The World Bank is another institution that was created at again, Bretton Woods, and what this does, it gives loans to developing countries, again, poorer countries, to help their economies. Because again, we want the countries of Africa to basically buy American stuff. So if their economy is doing better, they have more money, and then they can buy our stuff. So again, the United States is the biggest depositor into the World Bank. That's why there's always an American running the bank. And what the bank does, it looks at a country like, I don't know, you say Angola, and that's a bad example. It's like, say, Mozambique in South Africa, and what does that country need to help their economy, right? Do they need help with health issues? Do they need help with education? Do they need infrastructure like dams or roads? And they basically will help them with this project that will help their overall economy. So this is one of the big lessons of World War II, is that we are involved all over the world trying to improve economies. But do we do this to try to, again, temper the communists that are also trying to get influence? You know, the communist Russia is trying to get influence around the world. Yeah, that's part of it too. But it is very different from the end of World War I, where we were isolationists. Now we're basically a world leader and a big part of the world. Another part of this economically is with the helping trade, right? There's this organization that started the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. And again, this will change its name now to the World Trade Organization, or the WTO. But basically what this organization does, it's the referee for trade. Like, for example, if France wants to import U.S. wines, import wine into the United States, and the United States has a high tax on French wine to protect our wine producers, the World Trade Organizations will, France can take us to the World Trade Organization and they can make us lower our taxes, our tariffs on those imported French wines. So it's like the referee for world trade. Right now we have a case in the World Trade Organization about China with solar panels. We think that China is actually undercutting our solar panel production in this country by selling solar panels from China at a below market rate. So what they try to do is basically facilitate world trade. And so everyone's playing in the same level playing field, that no one country can keep trade out and then have them, basically sell their stuff all over the world, right? It'd be really nice if a country could build walls to keep, goods from other countries coming in, and then be able to trade around the world. They would make out fairly well. So with the World Trade Organization, if you join this as a country, the WTO, you have to agree to a lot of stipulations. So again, you can see today there are 149 members in the WTO. And again, Mr. Trump has been railing against the Clintons allowing China to become members of the World Trade Organization. So again, it's an international world after World War II compared to World War I. That's the big theme with this essay. And again, the other thing is the United Nations, of course, is created at the end of World War II. Again, we don't join the League of Nations, but the United Nations basically is created in New York. Again, it was decided in San Francisco. So again, this is a U.S.-led organization at the time to try and create this United Nations. Now, again, we have a lot of influence in the United Nations because we pay the highest bill, because we are the largest economy in the world. So if you're going to do this essay, you have to mention these international organizations. And again, this is this PowerPoint in Blackboard. And then it's a big difference between World War I and World War II. That's the key understanding. Should we keep it this way, this U.S. involved internationally? That's up for debate in this election, Lord knows. Here we'll see there's also the Declaration of Human Rights. Notice there's Eleanor Roosevelt, who was the chairwoman of the committee that puts together the Declaration of Human Rights. If you join the United Nations as a country, you have to sign the Declaration of Human Rights. So basically, it's like a legal binding document for the whole world. The hard part is, do people actually respect it, which is another thing. So take a look at this. If you have any questions on this essay, email me. But again, the key things are the international organizations that are created after World War II. It wouldn't hurt to take a look at the links, again, of the IMF and the World Bank and the World Trade Organization. They will explain, it basically goes to their websites and they explain what they do. So email me if you got a question. How do I stop this thing?